Hey, folks, and welcome to the show. This is Counterclipping Show number 121, live from Buckeye Game Fest for April 24th, 2023. So, I would like everybody to let me know how the audio, visual, and lag quality is because let's say that the internet here is not that great. Now, we did downscale it to 720. So, if you notice a resolution difference, that is why, but we are louder. You want me to be louder? Can I turn this up? Maybe I can turn that up. That's not how that works. If my volume is too low, that's unusual for one thing. But that is a thing that I can adjust in principle. There we go. Let's see if that works any better. Hopefully it does. So Mandarin Mike says everything is a-okay. So fantastic. We don't have a set prepared topic tonight. We're just going to kind of talk about what's going on here at Buckeye Game Fest. We might do an abbreviated show, and we should have a special guest popping in relatively shortly. I do not have anything to drink because I didn't bring anything, and I am clipping the Musket and Pike dual pack, and we will not be finishing it this evening. I did put a couple pictures up earlier on social media. We have 2 games of La Bataille up and running. One using both are Mont Saint Jean, by the way, so the Battle of Waterloo. And one is using the Premier rules. One is using the Marie Louise rules. I am in the Marie Louise game, and we got one turn in, and the folks playing the Premier rules got something like 6 or 8 turns in. So they are moving definitely faster from us. And the debut of the fancy banner, too, it will be making its appearance at Origins as well, hopefully with better placement next time around. So I did some bandwidth testing on here, and it was super dodgy. So I'm not sure that it's going to hold up. If it doesn't, just, like I said, let me know. Andrew Mike would prefer the Tina Louise rules. So before we go any further, let's say hello to Stacking Limit. Vicky here is in the house. Welcome back. Rob Johnson, Carl Crater from the War Game Boot Camp, Wade Moore, Joe Perez, Mark McNair, Charles Latorre, Lee Grant, Roy McGaw, Jeffrey Edwards, Ed Holtzman, Six Actual, Michael Schmaus, Paul Sin, welcome back, Jason W., Tim Greenhaw, Patrick of Patrick's Tactics and Tutorial, Stigler is in the house, and as cheerful as usual, David Imperato, the legend himself, Fucko, who if you show up here at Buckeye Game Fest, you can have a chance to play OCS with. It is great. Dale Brady, Joel, Meandering Mike is here. Ed Holtzman, I think I got you already. John C. from the sunny Philippines. It was sunny part of the day here, but otherwise the weather was crappy. Scott Bell is in the house. Abraxas MF, John Clark, HUN 644, Failure to Route, still an excellent name. William Bird, David Zell, Jeff Beeler, if I haven't gotten you yet. U-Boater 658, Tim Zales. I'm actually going through the list this time. Alan Salazar, if I didn't get you. Farshad Niyazi. Let's see, Nutball. There you go. Him and Fucko are getting together tonight. Jeff Taylor, who is here at Buckeye Game Fest and who is in the other of the 2 La Bataille games. Peter Rushton. We just managed to screw that up. Vince Reed, Joe Okabayashi. Jason W., I think I got you. William Aarons, didn't get you yet. Dan Dolan, welcome back, Dan. Good to see you here. I think we got everybody. John Nolan, Magizark. I think we're saying that in a sort of sensible way. So we're having a good time so far. It's not exactly an eye-popping number of people in this room, but we did get 3 tables set up today. The OCS game has not yet started. He's waiting for players, but it's set up. So we got 3 tables set up. We will have additional folks filing in tomorrow, including the folks from Blue Panther and or Catastrophe Games, or however that operation is representing itself at this particular event. Plus, the 2 gentlemen from the Players Aid will be arriving at some point tomorrow. I'm not sure I remember exactly. They told me, but I'm not sure I remember exactly what time. And they're going to be running a bunch of additional stuff as well. So there's plenty to do here. Even now, when it's the War Room and the rest of the convention's not running, there's still a lot of stuff happening. Now, that said, everybody packed up at about 7 o'clock today. People flew in, people drove in, and all that stuff. So I expect longer days to be pulled in subsequent days. And of course, some folks got upset when I said, "Oh yeah, we're probably going to call it at 6." We called it at 6, but we did spend a lot of time setting our Labatai game up. So it's looking good so far. It is too early for me to offer any concrete analysis of it yet at this time. We had discussed at one point playing this game with the Premier rules, and that ended up getting changed to Marie Louise, which is what these same folks typically play, actually, instead of Premier or 5th edition or what have you. But we did get we did get one full turn done. It is Marie Louise uses an interesting chit pull mechanism whereby you do all the movement via a chit pull, but then after that you do all the fire combat, and then after all that you do all the assaults, and then assaults themselves are declared in the movement phase but are resolved in the assault phase. So I want to see how that works. In the first turn we did not have any assaults yet. Very likely that we will see an assault on Hougoumont in the second turn, I would think. But we will see exactly how that works. Much depends on how the chits come out. Paul West, welcome back to the stream. Good to see you here. So Stigler is upset that I have called him cheerful. He is the Worf of wargaming. I protest. I am not a merry man. So great scene. Great scene. Great episode, actually, now that I think about it. So Stigler says, how come? So Stigler, I think you're under a misapprehension. Oops, let me pull this back up. Stigler, I think you're under a misapprehension here. I am not sure that the Premier rules are more complex. I think they're more straightforward from what I've seen so far. That said, I've played exactly one turn of Marie Louise, done some fiddling around at home with the Premier rules, so I am perhaps not the person to ask. But it just so happens that the person to ask is here tonight, and here he comes. So we will ask him what the average complexity levels are amongst the different Labatai rule set. Joining me is Eric Holmgren of Eric's Table Napoleonic Battles. You're doing your live stream tonight too, right?
No.
Okay.
No, that would be too much to do.
I would think so.
So hello.
So
history buffs and fellow war gamers.
Go subscribe to Eric's Table Napoleonic Battles if you're not subscribed already. He normally streams right after I do on Monday nights, but not tonight.
Not tonight.
Not tonight.
We are going to be starting probably next week a live stream of the Battle of Austerlitz, Labatai to Austerlitz.
That sounds very exciting.
We'll have a 6-player game.
Awesome.
So
awesome.
It should be a lot of fun.
Well, it's a big battle. You haven't picked up set sides yet, though, right?
We have not picked sides yet, so we will have to see. But we do have experienced players for the most part. So
very good. Be a lot of fun. Good. What you guys are going to use Premiere for that?
We are going to use Premiere. It tends to work a little bit better given the sprawl of the map and low counter density, and therefore people can move their stuff around without having to worry about being in proximity to Kutuzov or Napoleon type of thing. So it works out pretty well. Good.
Now let's talk, because we've got questions here about the different Labatai rule sets. As comes up every time Labatai is mentioned, right?
Sure.
Because it's from looking at it from the outside, it's a pretty confusing landscape. So I believe I'm correct in saying that if you want the maximum amount of chrome and are willing to deal with the highest level of complexity, that you're going to be playing with the regs.
That is correct.
Okay, so that's available from the Clash of Arms website. But then
not the Clash of Arms website. It's from the labatai.us.
Well, that's
website.
run by Clash of Arms, though, right?
Actually, it's run by a bunch of fans of the. Yeah.
Labatai.us. I mean, I knew the website. I just thought that was so that's the website that supports the Clash of Arms version
and everybody's version.
Okay.
Yeah. So they have ways. They have stuff to refit your ancient games or your Martial Enterprise games to play with regs and Marie Louise. So there's a gentleman, I think his name is Nigel, I don't know his last name off the top of my head, who's done the lion's share of the work on basically having, if you want to play regs or Marie Louise with any of the old games, ones from the 70s, 80s, etc., there's material there on that website that can help you with that.
Okay. And then the Premier rules are available at labatai.me, which is correct. Which is the Martial Enterprise.
That is the Martial Enterprise.
And I'm pretty sure that's what, the island of Malta or something like
that.
It
is not. It is Montenegro.
Montenegro. It's a Montenegrin website, folks. So And I think it's just how it worked out because it's ME.
It's
so.
ME indeed.
And the guys from Marshall Enterprises will be here. We are expecting them on Wednesday, and they are going to run their own game of Labatide to Heilsberg using their own Premier rules.
Correct.
So we had talked about using Premier for our game, as we had already talked about. And once it was clear who the players were going to be, and it was all the same guys who normally play Marie Louise, they ended up deciding, oh, we'll just play Marie Louise. Everybody knows that, except Gary. Screw him. So I who had spent some time prepping on Premiere, which I found pretty straightforward,
Yep.
right? I think it's a pretty clearly written book. I found it a lot easier to deal with. I found its explanations of overall flow to be clearer than I'm finding in Marie Louise or the regs. And then, of course, Marie Louise is just kind of a condensed version of the regs.
It's a lighter version of the regs, is a better way of looking at it. It has a lot of the very same general game mechanics as the regs, but it doesn't have as much chrome. So it does tend to make things a little easier for folks, particularly if they're picking up the game for the first time.
Marty Sample and Mark Ruggiero, welcome back to the stream. Good to have you guys here. Marty, I don't know, you should be here. You've been here before. It's a great event. You should be here. You would be playing something with us and possibly eating Chinese food right now if that was the case. So Jeff says that so this is I had already picked up several Labatide games by the time this thing became available again.
Right.
The Labatide Devotion from Against the Odds. They still have Jeff, did you just order that? Do they still have those? Do you know if they still have those?
I do not know. I know that they had a promotion going on. If you'd ordered $100 or more of magazines or products from them before the end of 2022, they would then, as a bonus, send you Beauchamp. They had components left, maps and counters. And then I think they had a disc that had then the rules and the other particulars for it. And that's a really good game. That's a fun game.
Yeah, it's nice and small.
Yeah.
It's like a counter sheet and a half, as I recall. So it's a little big for a magazine game, but for a Labatide game, it's puny, right? So and it uses a sort of condensed version of the Premier rules.
Premier rules, correct.
So and it's really clean, and I'm pretty impressed with it. And of course, the component quality is pretty much the same, or at least the chronographics are pretty much the same. And the paper quality of the maps is maybe not quite there, but still, nobody's going to complain about that. It is, after all, a magazine game. So let's hear what's happened in your Labatide game of Mont Saint Jean so far.
Yeah, so we everybody more or less showed up here by about noon today. And so by about that point in the day, we got all the counters on the organizational charts. And then around noon, when everyone got here, then we started actually putting them on the map, getting everything kind of set to go.
We were still reading the factors on the counters in a magnifying glass at that time. So.
And so then we were able to, just before we take a break for lunch around 2:00, actually get the first turn in. And usually the first several turns are spent with people maneuvering and sort of shaking out their units where they're going to start to deploy things. So the French were sending some stuff from, I guess, the right side of the French line over to the left, and a few things from the left over to the right. So they were kind of shuffling some things around, pushing forward a little bit. They haven't really made a big attack yet. We're expecting that here in the next turn or two. They finally have the old guard cannons and batteries. They've got a couple of grand batteries now kind of set up between La Haye Sainte and the Chateau Hougoumont. And so they're starting to rain some howitzer shells on the Brunswicker that are hiding, cowering behind the reverse slope there. And so we're expecting the French to come charging at us at any moment. The one nice thing with us using, I had played this last year at Tempe using the 5th edition rules. And I was also playing the Allies then. And using the 5th edition rules, there's a number of command control elements that are kind of restricting the amount of movement that the Allies have. And to a lesser degree, there's certain limitations on how much the French can move. the French still have a greater degree of latitude using the command control than the Allies do. Principally because in most cases, the French can activate an entire corps if everyone's within range, while the Allies, particularly the English and their Dutch, Belgian allies can only maybe activate a brigade at a time. So much different. Since we're using Premier, we don't have that same limitation, and so we haven't started quite timing our moves yet. We'll probably be doing that here. But we have a player who's brand new to the system, so we're giving him some latitude. But that's allowing everybody to move their units around with a greater degree of freedom. It doesn't mean we're going wild and sending people off to, way out on the wild wings of stuff. But you certainly have the capacity to do that without having
You
to
could
stay
send
within the
somebody go
zones.
get Grushi though.
We could.
So.
We're very much tempted to do that and tell him to go the other way. So, yeah. So we'll see how it goes as it develops. But generally speaking, we're about 6 turns in, and the French are within striking distance to start some assaults there on the Allied left wing.
Now it looks like you pulled the Coldstream Guards out of the chateau at Le Mans.
Yes. So my teammate Brennan decided it wasn't really worth having some of the best British units fighting in that terrain. Better to keep them back where their line, fire values are much more impressive and would be able to do a lot more damage to the French, and sacrifice some poor Nassauer unit to be slowly ground down to putty by the French skirmishers,
who have it more or less surrounded at this point. There'll be pictures of all this, folks. I got a couple already. But we'll take some more pictures tomorrow. So since you mentioned the 5th edition rules, let's talk about the sort of relationship between the 5th edition rules, which are obviously after the 4th edition rules, which are after the 3rd edition rules.
Right.
But let's talk about kind of the relationship of that rule set, which is still available, right? You got it in Mont St. John, in fact.
Yeah. So it's basically gone out in every rule set since Dresden was published.
Okay.
So it was in Dresden, in Linie 2, and then here in Mont St. Jean. And I expect that it'll be in future publications as well. And so it seems to be the new standard from Clash of Arms.
Okay.
So to put it in a nutshell, it is a little bit of a hybrid between some of the concepts that were in the Regs and Marie Louise with the 3rd edition.
Okay.
So when the 3rd edition was originally released back in the 80s, they did not have command control. And so in the 90s, when the first set of Quatre Bras, Ligny, and Mont St. Jean came out, this was the first time that they started introducing concepts of command control, where you've got to be within 10 hexes or 3 hexes or whatever these different command status ranges. But that was just specific to the scenario. It wasn't in the rules particularly. And then they went through a period of time in the late 90s, early 2000s with Quatre Bras 2 and Lutzen, where you had more of what we consider the 4th edition rules, the Regs 23 as they were called, that had the different elements that ended up in the Regs 30 and Marie Louise.
Okay, so you just said something that I think I didn't realize. So are we saying that Regs 23 is the 4th edition?
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Totally news to me. Didn't know that at all. Because I've seen Regs 23. It pops up
on eBay for like $2.
Yeah,
like
typically. And I haven't bought it, strangely enough. So now that I know that, that's very interesting. I don't need that now.
You do not need it.
So I mean, I've got 4 different rule sets, so I'm kind of covered, right?
Yeah. So the nice thing about the 5th edition rules, the 3rd edition rules were very popular, and they are in many ways very similar to the Premier with the you go, I go type of concept. But they now, with the 5th edition, they have a more clear and defined command control that's built in. They also have integrated with it some of the roll to close assault designation that you're doing in the movement segment, which harkens to some of the things that happened with Regs and Louise.
Mm-hmm.
So in that particular regard, it's a little bit of a hybrid between the two.
Okay.
Not as much Chrome, but it does have some chit pull.
Mm-hmm.
But it tends to be you draw the first, say, French chit, and then
Mhm.
all the French move who've got activations.
Okay.
So it works much better for team play. And when we had played it at Tempe, it tends to go much quicker instead of waiting for your turn for your move to get drawn at some point in time. All the French go at the same time. So you still have the potential for back-to-back moves if that's the case. And you do have the designation, so where only things that are marked with a move can move. So you just can't move everything or anything you want.
Right. Now we did notice. I'll point this out for folks who haven't looked at any of these rule sets. That the way Marie Louise works is that the chit pull only defines movement, right? So you draw a chit, you move those units, you draw it, and maybe declare some assaults,
right?
Or charges. And then somebody else draws it. You draw a next chit, which might be somebody else, right? But then the combat is in its own phase after all the
chits have been pulled. Yes.
So it didn't take us long. Now, admittedly, it's at the beginning of the battle. It's 11:20 in the morning, and there is a meeting engagement element to Waterloo where additional reinforcements stream in for the French, and of course, half a Prussian army shows up on the right flank. So a lot of the troops that will be in the battle are not there yet. So bear that in mind. But our individual chit activations generally did not take very long.
Right.
But even that aside, just the chits took longer than it took you guys to play entire turns.
Yes.
So I couldn't help but notice. You guys got about 6 turns. Now we started later because we took a lot longer with the setup. So in the time that we played one turn, you guys probably ran 2 or 3 turns.
Yeah,
I would say. So it's definitely playing faster, and they're not that far ahead of us. So there's a similar number of pieces on the map to move.
Correct. And the bigger difference is just, I mean, it's going to bog down for us here in no time at all once we start having more combat.
Oh, sure. You guys have it.
So right now we've only had, I think I did 1 cavalry charge, and there's been a little bit of melee, and there's mostly been some sporadic firing up and down the line, but nothing too terribly significant.
Okay.
So once we start to get into stuff where we've got assaults happening up and down the line, that's going to then generally bog down the flow of it.
Well, that's going to happen. I mean, I'd expect.
Yeah, that's going to happen with anything. But the difference is, given that we're using Premier, we can attack all the way up and down the line, while with Regs or Marie Louise or 5th edition for that matter, you've only got whatever you'd activated as a move, a maneuver unit that can actually engage potentially in an assault or into a charge.
Yes.
So we have the potential for a lot more stuff to be engaged, which can then bog things down quite a bit. And so we'll end up paying for it at some point.
Okay. Well, I'm going to get the stopwatch out and start timing turns at some point during the course of the week here. So you guys are going to be playing all week, right?
That is the hope. Yes.
Very good.
So we've got one of our colleagues is going to be joining the folks from Marshall Enterprise playing Heilsberg on Thursday. So when that happens, then I will try to handle the entire Allied army.
The French will have, if they have their way, they'll have you annihilated by then.
That, I think, is their hope.
And you might just be running the Prussians.
I could be, in which case maybe I'll come over and join your
team.
There
you go. There you go. That would be totally fine. I'm sure we would love to have you. So this is, I think both games, I mean, I'm having fun with it so far.
Right.
It's super duper early though, so it's too soon for me to say. But I do feel like, at least for the larger format games, and I felt like this a month and a half ago when we decided we were going to play Marie Louise, I think my preference was going to be to land, based on what I know today, with the Premier rules rather than with Marie Louise or the regs. Now, for playing at home, I might prefer the regs, actually.
Yeah, for solitaire, I tend to recommend Marie Louise or the regs because that chit pull mechanism, which in a team game becomes potentially tedious, where you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs for your turn to come up, it adds to variety and chaos in a solitaire game that you don't get if it's just you go, I go kind of thing. So I tend to recommend that for a solitaire game. The one thing I will recommend with 5th edition and the others that have a more defined command control system is that It really does make a difference when your critical leaders are wounded or killed, where now suddenly you've got a big hole in your command structure.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that same issue with the Premier.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the way that we've occasionally simulated is okay, it's a Battle of Auerstadt and Brunswick is carried away.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of having move the entire Prussian
Mm-hmm.
army, oh, now you only have 6 minutes to move the entire Prussian army.
Mm-hmm.
So you would then compensate for it. So you're not just throwing in your Marshal Ney into any higgly-piggly attack.
Mm-hmm.
You're holding them back. But that's not something that's specific for Premier. That's kind of something that we have as a house rule.
So let's actually talk about that, because that's an interesting. We were talking about this earlier today, that there is an actual time limit built in
Correct.
on the move. So which rule sets feature that?
So the 3rd edition, the 5th edition, both have timed movement,
Mm-hmm.
and then Premier. And so Premier relies entirely on timed movement as its throttle on your command
Mm-hmm.
situation.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a particularly large force and they stipulate, okay, you got 10 minutes to move things,
Mm-hmm.
well, you can either set up the perfect attack and spend all 10 minutes
Mm-hmm.
moving one division into place to basically the absence of everybody else moving, or you can rush an attack and try to bring up as many reinforcements and everything else as you
Mm-hmm.
can. So you are going to be making mistakes if you run out of time. You are going to be potentially leaving units behind
Mm-hmm.
if you run out of time.
And it's customary, of course, to use air horns when the time runs out.
Air horns or electroshock therapy.
That works too.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
yep.
Cattle prod will definitely.
Yep. Jumper cables hooked up to the car battery underneath the table.
Yeah. So that tends to keep everything moving along. And for a game at a conference or a team game,
Mm-hmm.
we want to get to some sort of conclusion. I mean,
Sure.
Waterloo goes until like 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night or whatever.
I'm sure we should start using this rule in OCS, actually.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Well, and it does make sure that folks that are really focusing are going to get done what they can.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't like it, but it's there for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, like I said, currently in our game, we're not using the timer yet, while we let this one fella get a little bit more acquainted with the general flow of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So here's a question that we got from Abraxas MF. How does the time limit in Premiere work with varying number of players? So do you adjust for that?
So typically the suggested time is about 10 minutes per corps. So if you so when we've played some of these larger battles, what I've been helping the Marshall Enterprise guys do play testing for about 5-6 years now. And usually what'll happen is they'll have maybe 3 or 4 players on one side,
Mm-hmm.
and each player will have a infantry corps and associated cavalry.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got, if you're the French, maybe 10 minutes to move.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're the Allies, perhaps you have 8 minutes to move. But everyone's got about a corps.
Mm-hmm.
So in a case where you're trying to maneuver 2 corps, then we've either gone with something like, okay, you've got either 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever the case might be. So here we had done a timed movement on, I think, the 2nd or 3rd turn, and the French were taking about 25 minutes to move everything.
Okay.
And
well, that's not bad, though.
That's 2 players moving 4 corps.
Yeah.
So that wasn't too bad at all. And the Allies, it's not taking us too long to move stuff, mostly because we're on the defense.
Mm-hmm.
So the English are kind of sitting there waiting for stuff to happen, and the Prussians are moving in from the east as reinforcements. So, but generally speaking, that's how you would handle it.
Okay. So it's like a suggested time that's provided with the scenario.
Correct.
And then you can adjust that based on your own constraints at the table, right?
Exactly.
If you have it split in a weird way where one person's got, if you got 3 corps and 2 players, right? You got to split that somehow, unless you're going to split 1 corps down the middle.
Right. So, for example, we'd been playing the Battle of Ligny on Vassal for Mondays for the last, I don't know, 6 months perhaps, and we had found that 10 minutes was too little time for everyone to try to move all their associated stuff, and we thought, well, okay, there's 3 or 4 Prussian corps. similar number of French. Should we be doing 20 minutes? And we decided that we would sort of split the difference, go 15 minutes per turn. So that way we could get done and it wouldn't be too late at night for the different players, since we're in different time zones. And so, if you're working with, guys, you can negotiate it and figure it out. So that way it's fun and no one's going to be unhappy.
Play with reasonable people, folks. That's my advice.
Yes.
So
always good advice.
If you're playing with crazy people, you're going to have a bad time and arguments about the time limit.
Well, and everything else too.
Well, that's true. Yeah. It's going to extend
every rule
spill well over the game table.
Yeah. It's less than optimal.
So, So, okay, cool. So, I mean, I'm curious. We'll sit down again later in the week, I think, and do some static videos so that we don't have to worry about this dodgy Wi-Fi. And then we can talk more in depth about my experience as a new player playing Marie Louise, and we're playing the same battle. Bear in mind, right? So, and also things like how much faster are they moving than us, right? I mean, they moved a lot faster than us today. I wasn't the holdup today,
right?
So, but the setup was what the holdup was. It was just a lot of fiddling around with the setup. So. That got us off to a much later start. Once we started, it moved relatively fluidly. I felt.
Well, and given the fact that you have fewer maneuver units, means that you're not moving that many things on the board.
That's true.
In general. And so therefore, you can get stuff done. And it's just depends, because there's not a time limit. You could have somebody spend 10 or 15 minutes moving their one single division.
Right.
And you've got, how many divisions or corps or whatever else that have to get moved.
Yeah.
And so the whole thing could really stretch out a long time. And I think that was the idea behind the 5th edition rules, having the time limit and having the command control structure. So it was kind of a marriage of a lot of these different elements, so that for a team game, the 5th edition works pretty well. And I've played Monseigneur Jean twice using 5th edition rules. And we played the Battle of Moscow. We had a live stream of that we did for almost a year. It was a 6-player game on Vassal and Discord using 5th edition. And we did Dresden as well. I think of 5 or 6 players.
Yeah, that's a big battle. Moscow is a big battle. So
yes.
Okay. And it should be a meat grinder too.
It pretty much was. Okay. Yeah. And not a lot of maneuver.
Yeah. Well, a lot of moving forward into positions you don't want to move forward into. So, and I've got all the recent stuff from Clash of Arms. So at this point, I'm kind of invested. So I'm going to find, like I was telling people, if I don't like Marie Louise, that's okay. I'll just switch to a different rule set.
And
it's all good.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I tell people, you've probably heard too, and I hear this as a frequent refrain. Oh, why don't they just have one rule set and everything else? And to be honest with you, I like the fact that there are multiple rule sets to pick from. Because,
quite different too. I mean, we're not talking about like squad leader and advanced squad leader, right? These are generally, Regs and Marie Louise is kind of that type of relationship, where one is just a more detailed, chromy version of the other. But the 5th edition rules are noticeably different. The Premier rules are even more noticeably different. So there's like a real range of systems to pick from, and that is kind of nice.
It is, and it really gives you a chance to find the one that works for you or works for you and your friends. So for a long time, we'd played the 3rd edition, which is basically move and do your combat, and the next guy moves and does his combat. So it was a great beer and pretzels kind of rule set, because it was very simple, and it didn't require a lot of in-depth type of actions to think about. Still captures obviously the different mechanics and aspects of the tactics from the period, but is a really easy system to play. But it doesn't have a lot of chrome, and it doesn't, obviously there's elements, if you want different pieces of it that are important to you, well, then you're going to use something else.
You got to keep track of individual cannonballs in some cases.
Not quite that bad, but yes.
Campaign for North Belgium.
Yeah. If you use the ricochet rules, you've got lots of stuff. You've got ammunition, there's a number of things that you could keep track of that are, I've never really been a huge fan of keeping track of ammunition, to be
I
honest with
can
you.
understand
It's
that.
just like, we roll and it's resupplied. Okay, why did
Mhm.
we bother to put a marker on it, kind of a
Mhm.
thing. So, but yes, with the rules having a variety, people then can find the one that works for them
Mhm.
or works for the situation that they're doing.
Mhm.
And so I think that's actually a strength for the series and not necessarily a weakness.
Yeah, it the only I mean, sort of having seen it now, really the only hurdle there is just people from the outside looking in are like, I don't know what the hell I'm even looking at, right? You got all these different rule sets, and every game's got a different one, and it's no, not quite, but there's a couple different ones floating around at any given time. And the relationship between those is not necessarily obvious. Fortunately, I can ask Eric about that,
There
so
you
he can
go.
tell me what the
Or you can watch one of my exciting videos
or subscribe
or
to his
live
channel,
stream. Yeah.
and you will be consistently topped up with Labatai and Battles of the Age of Reason content too.
Yep.
So,
Yep. And all the other exciting Napoleonic
mhm.
games that are coming
Yeah,
out.
has been mentioned in the chat, and we've talked about it a little bit here in the room today. The upcoming Glory and Empire from
Yep.
Carrie Doherty and Lock and Load Publishing. It certainly looks nice.
It does. I had a chance to take a look at a preview copy that they had sent me, and the components look really good. The one thing that a lot of people will like is with Labatai, a lot of the details about the quality of the unit, its fire value, its melee value, its morale, are on the back side of the counter.
Right.
The idea being that your opponent doesn't know how good or bad your unit is. So
Yeah.
it was there for a reason. Of course, as I've gotten older, I don't really like having to flip it over and what exactly
Right.
is that? That's the downside.
Right. Or memorizing the counters. So,
Yeah, yeah. But uh but with the new one coming out, Glory and Empire, it's got all the stats right on the counter.
mhm.
They use a step loss type of system.
Mhm.
So as the unit takes hits, you're just going to flip it over to the next step down or switch it out for whatever the next step loss counter is.
Mhm.
And once it goes to the next step down, well, it already reflects the
Right.
fire value and the melee value and the morale taking a hit from
Right.
being one step less.
Right.
So from a purely how do I have to do math in my head for,
Mhm.
9/10 of XYZ,
Right.
which we have to do a fair amount.
There's a table for that, but
Yeah.
yes. But yes, there are so this is interesting. And I'm not sure I've seen this in any other system. So there's in unit increments, which are kind of like steps, but not really. So
Yeah.
you might have a 9 increment battalion, for example. But then as that takes hits, you have to do math. So if it's taken 3 hits, then it's at 6 increments, which means you're taking the 6/9 times the fire value times
Right.
the fire multiplier, and then
No,
figuring out
not fire value. That's the melee
the
value.
melee value,
Yeah.
right? So and then there's so it's a little convoluted, right? It
It
makes
just
sense.
requires that you have to know your fractions.
Yes, or you have a calculator, or in fact, just look at the table.
Yeah.
So that's the easiest way to do it, to be completely honest. Dave did without looking at the table or using the calculator, so he is an old hand at this.
Yeah, and if you play it enough like I do, you could just kind of look at it and go, okay, here's what it is. And
Mhm.
most of the units, after a while, you see that, okay, heavy cavalry, crosshairs, whatever else,
Mhm.
they're about 4 melee value per increment.
Mhm.
Maybe 4.1, 4.2, maybe 3.8 on some, but
Mhm.
usually about 4. Light cavalry is about 3. Your infantry are about 2. If it's guard, maybe it's 2.5.
Mhm.
And so after a while, you kind of have a sense of it, and you just kind of look at it and go, okay, it's about, so it's lost 1 increment or 2 increments. Okay, it's 5 off. It's
Mhm.
melee value.
Yeah.
So you can kind of wing it like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as long as you don't have someone who's insisting on every fraction being rounded, you
Right.
should be okay.
Yeah, we're going to be okay. We didn't invite those people to play in these games this year, so we're going to be okay. Now, I have not seen an assault yet, right? Because we only got the one turn in, and there's really no opportunity. I guess I could have rushed guys in to try and assault Hougoumont, but I wasn't really close enough to do that.
You
so,
want to soften them up a little bit.
yeah, and we have a little bit. So we'll see how that looks. And my enemies might be watching the stream right now, so I can't tell you what my ultimate plan is. But there'll be pictures as we continue.
We can provide some false information.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
we
The
could.
French are intending to withdraw, and Napoleon is going to get on a boat to Boston.
There you go.
So that's the actual plan.
That would have been great.
The British are going to overrun the hex, and we're going to say that's not actually Napoleon. That is just
a body double,
a duplicate wearing his hat.
There you go.
And he is actually on a boat to Boston right now.
There you go. Marshall Ney along with him.
Marshall, yeah, he
definitely
he would have gotten it better if that had happened. So all right. So thanks for stopping. Thanks
you are welcome.
Thanks for talking, and we'll continue.
Glad to see everybody. Yes, we will catch everybody up
to chat with Eric throughout the week, and maybe we'll have some more video that we get done that will be released over the coming months.
Yes, whether you like it or not.
Yes, you will be punished with it. So thanks again.
You're welcome, Gary.
All right. And don't forget to subscribe to Eric's Table Napoleonic Battles. Again, he's not streaming tonight for obvious reasons. So I am the last person in the room at this point. Eric is just packing up right now. And so we may pack it in here, say in about 20 minutes, do a 1 hour stream instead of the typical 2 hour stream that we typically do. And let me know again if the quality is having problems or not. We are going to attempt to do the stream with Dan tomorrow night with our very, very special guest. So we'll see if that works as well. We could do Traveler Talk, actually. So I did not only bring the Traveler rulebook with me, but I have an adventure ready to go. It's a pre-written adventure, of course. A classic Traveler pre-written adventure. Now, the cool thing about this is even though all those come with all the classic Traveler adventures come with pre-generated characters. I wouldn't use them because unless it was a real specialized adventure, because character creation in classic Traveler takes like 5 minutes. So chances of a Traveler game spontaneously breaking out at some point this week is pretty good. Another thing that we do plan to do this week is the Artemis Spaceship Bridge Simulator. This is the #1 best place on the planet to do that, unless you have the proper equipment to do it in your own home, in which case, good for you. I don't. Unlike, say, at Origins, where it's like $15, or I don't know if they still charge for it or not, since they changed the way that works at Origins, but it used to be relatively expensive for like a 45 or 60-minute slot to do it, but it was like totally worth it, but you couldn't like do it 4 times a day. Here, you can do it as much as you want. The wait is maybe not 0, but it is minimal, and you have already paid for it, and the Artemis people are here. So the chances of us getting a big Artemis game going with Alexander and Grant from the Players Aid, and David Thompson and Brant from the Armchair Dragoons, and whoever else wants to play is excellent. But that probably won't happen until Thursday or Friday or something like that. So everything, it's a great event to do that at. Jeff, this is a great point. He is watching this live stream in the hotel on the same Wi-Fi network that. So I'm literally, he's not really watching it. He's in the next room and he can hear me through the wall. So, and for those who don't know, and I've talked about this plenty, but just for the sake of getting it out, Buckeye Game Fest is in downtown Columbus, Ohio, and it is held in one of the hotels that is attached to the Greater Columbus Convention Center, which is where Origins is held this year in late June. Now, the Hyatt is a longtime partner of Origins, and Origins is big enough that it overfills the convention center and spills over into the neighboring Hyatt. So I have spent actually over the last, Jesus Christ, number of years, 27 years or so, kind of a considerable amount of time in this facility. Not exclusively for Origins, but a lot of the time it has been. Generally speaking, not all, but a lot of the role-playing events are held over here at the Hyatt, whereas the board gaming, miniatures gaming, card gaming, whatever else is held over at the convention center. Nevertheless, there is a huge amount of space here, and this facility could swallow 15 Buckeye Game Fests and not even notice. Stuka Joe is in the house. Stuka Joe, welcome back. Always good to have you here. And hi to everybody who has stopped in as well that I didn't get a chance to say hello to. So I apologize if I have missed you. Um, the I don't want to call them bad names. They can have fun playing whatever they want to play. I don't have to play it with them, right? They will arrive. Honestly, some of them will probably be here on Wednesday night, but that action begins in earnest on Thursday. And there are some interesting things happening over there. There's a grand diplomacy game, which is like diplomacy played on a giant carpet, which is, not a war game, but it is another game that has existed in the war game space, right? So it's one of ours, even if it's not a war game. Um, so those folks, I'm not playing in that. I ain't got the time to do that. But Marcon, yeah. So I think they were supposed to have ended Marcon, and then they sold it or transferred it or something. So Marcon is going to continue. I have to this date, despite spending 12 years or so in Columbus, never went to Marcon. James Davis will be here Thursday through Sunday. So we do have um, a bar upstairs. So that's why I wasn't thinking about it at the time. I'm not sure I could bring that adult beverage down here. There's shaking of heads, so I believe that is a no-no. I would have asked had it come up, but they most hotels won't allow that. It is literally right upstairs, so I don't know. We are very regressive about that kind of thing in Ohio, to be honest. This is actually true. Kinetic battle can, in fact, result from a game of diplomacy that started out as a friendly, a friendly game of diplomacy never ends as a friendly game of diplomacy, as it is sometimes said. So, Alistair Logie, this is irrefutable logic. I have to agree. Jeff Beeler met George R. R. Martin at the room party at 1990's Marcon at the big bar on 2. I remember when you could still smoke up there. That's how long I've been coming to this convention. That's been a long time. Maybe Columbus City or this facility in particular was one of the first to ban indoor smoking. So it is nice. I haven't gone up there yet this year. I've literally not left the ground floor. We're all on the ground floor. So we have very little distance to walk to the food court, which wrapped everything up at about 6 p.m., except for the pizza place, which is fortunately pretty good. Jets Pizza, which is Detroit style pizza. They have lesser pizza there too, but the Detroit style pizza is the best pizza. So, and I will argue that with the folks from Chicago or New York anytime. This Detroit is good at two things: pizza and bullets. So that is pretty much what we got going on there too. So yeah, I've spent a lot of time in this particular facility, and those years where I do most of the role playing stuff, which that's been a while too. I spent a lot of time in here. I mean, there was an Origins where I did very little except for Pathfinder. That all happens over here, for instance. I do not know how that's going to shake out this year, but I do know that we are running the Third World War from Compass at Origins. Again, it is in late June. Um, yeah, so it's like over cheesed pizza that's got all the cheese burnt around the edges, and that's amazing. So I love cheese and burnt cheese and fried cheese, and if you get it with the double pepperoni, it's especially good. So Detroit pretty good for music too. Yeah, it's been a while since they were any good at cars, unfortunately, and they are square. That's true. And I got a 4-slice pizza. That I would say is about 10 or 12 inches square, something like that. Ate 3 pieces and didn't need to eat the fourth one. I'll eat the fourth one after the show. So it is made in a particular kind of rectangular pan, supposedly, but I'm not sure that makes any difference. I believe it just where's the key feature for the Detroit style pizza to me is the burnt cheese on the edges. So anyway, that is what is going on here so far. OCS Sicily is what is set up, and we have a couple people who are going to be here for that, but only one of them was here today, so he took off at about 6, and he will be back tomorrow, hopefully for the resumption of that event. I think we will put our extra counters in a little baggie as well. We get some blanks in here. I did remember everything. I remembered everything important anyway, except to get this computer set up for this stream. So all like the cloud stuff, couldn't touch it on the hotel's Wi-Fi. So my bad. I should have taken care of that before. And at some point, hopefully when I get home, we will. I'm always been reluctant to monkey with this laptop at home, to be honest. 'Cause it's supposed to be the travel machine, right? And I've had plenty of computer stuff to do. I did install some computer games. Haven't really spent any time with any of. I guess I put about 3 hours over a couple of nights into Conan Exiles, which is fun. In a very relaxing sort of, I'm going to kill crocodiles and harvest rocks sort of way, and maybe build some nicer things out of rocks. So that's a game I've put a lot of time into. I like the atmosphere of it. It's also very bloody and feels very Conan of the movie. The soundtrack in particular is not the movie soundtrack, but it is definitely heavily inspired by the movie soundtrack. I also played a little bit of Audio Surf 2, which is actually a rhythm game. It's the only rhythm game I've ever played, unless you count Rock Band. And had some fun with that. The cool thing about Audio Surf and Audio Surf 2 is you can play your own music through it locally off the machine or through YouTube, but I haven't actually figured out how to do that. So you can like pick the music rather than it being whatever random shit they want to give you. I haven't had Little Caesars in a long time. Isn't Little Caesars basically fast food pizza now, where you like get it out from under the heat lamp and it's like $5 a pizza? Or did they change that? Because that itself was an innovation, and it was a $5 pizza. And I guess from the standpoint of it being a $5 pizza, it wasn't that bad. Tim's Ales, yeah, I'm just playing solitaire though. I'm not playing co-op or on a server or anything like that. So as the descendant of Sicilians, this is not. Yes, Detroit style pizza does traditionally use brick cheese. I don't know why. It's just that they do. I can tell you that the pizza that my Sicilian relatives made, they're of course thoroughly Americanized, really isn't particularly like Detroit pizza. In fact, the only cheese that would be on it would be a Parmesan or Romano. This has quite a lot of cheese on it. And hey, I love cheese, so it's all good for me. To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentations of the women. The new computer is going okay. I have so the data transfer. What ended up happening is me buying a 6 terabyte external drive that was on sale and just moving everything to that. And then I am pulling stuff off of that as I need it. And that was the last step. There's a couple of oddball installations that still need to be done, but I'm not about to lose any sleep over any of that. It will be really nice to be able to play video games again, presuming I have the time. Detroit is not as bready as Sicilian. Yeah, I would agree with that. William Aarons, thank you so much. Much appreciated. The support is greatly appreciated. How much higher a level of complexity and difficulty do you rate the Labatai games in contrast to other Napoleonic era games you have played? Okay, so in this context, I am going to speak about Marie Louise specifically. And we have already covered that it is not the most complicated Labatai rule set available. That would be the regs. I would estimate that the Marie Louise rules are nearly an order of magnitude more complicated than Napoleon's Last Battles. So if Napoleon's Last Battles is a 5 on a scale of 1 to 9, the standard GMT scale of 1 to 9, then I feel that scale is somewhat logarithmic, right? I think that means Marie Louise is about a 7 and the regs is about an 8. And something like Gauss would be, say, a 9. That's at the very upper range of complexity overall games. I would probably put if we're putting Napoleon's Last Battles at a 5, maybe Library of Napoleonic Battles as a 6. So it's a big step up in complexity from the existing Napoleonic games that I've played, which include things like the Library of Napoleonic Battles and Napoleon's Last Battles and Commands and Colors Napoleonics. And on that scale, if you rank it in relation to those other games, I think Commands and Colors Napoleonics is like a 3. So it is easy. To its credit, right? I mean, that is how it is designed. It is designed to be easy. And it is really good at that. And it is for people who are kind of just getting into the topic of Napoleonic warfare or Ancients or whatever other Commands and Colors topic you got. I think it's a really good introduction. I do think that if you're really interested in the topic, you'll eventually want to move on to something else, something that is going to provide you with more red meat, as it were. So no, John, this is Disney, actually. John Carter movie was by Disney. And I liked it for what it was worth. I was a big fan of the books when I was like a young teenager. And for years would hoped for an RPG, and in fact picked up at one point Mark Herman's SPI John Carter game, which is a beautiful Don Mates cover, by the way. And it was not that. That was not what Mark was doing there. That said, I regret getting rid of it because I do think there was some interesting things in there. Not now looking at it and having heard Mark talk about it. So that's unfortunate, but we got rid of these things. Stigler, only insofar as you can overload a pizza with toppings such that it doesn't bake correctly. That is too much cheese. That's not too much cheese, it's just too much cheese for the oven. Right? Under pineapple. Every proper pizza is in fact under pineapple. Yeah, like I said, I liked the John Carter movie. I wish they would have kept going with it, but I also wish they wouldn't have willfully tanked it because it was the previous person in charge of Disney's project. Bible Board Games, thanks for stopping by. Much appreciated. Hopefully I have answered some of the questions that you had in the comments below. Joe Perez, also Sicilian relatives. Come on. Are we? Oh, dear. All right. I think we had a hitch there. Never made any pizza. So So my mom, who is like, we got the DNA test or I got the DNA test and I can tell what's coming from where, right? Because my mom's like 98.5% Italian, of Italian ancestry from different parts of Italy. And the other 1.5% is Greek. And we all know why that is there, because the Greeks ran that part of the world for a long time before the Italians took it back over. And my mother isn't, and she could be watching this, is a spectacularly good cook of Italian American food. Her sauerkraut is a fucking war crime. It is the worst sauerkraut you can possibly imagine. Horrific sauerkraut. So I'm completely comfortable with the fact that maybe Italians should stick to Italian food and Germans should stick to German food, and they can eat each other's food, and that's cool. But maybe folks who specialize in cooking Italian food should stay away from the sauerkraut, and folks that specialize in cooking German food should stay away from the pizza. So I am completely happy with that. Yes, Jeff Beeler, I completely agree. The marketing was terrible on it. Although I really like the first trailer, actually. I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's pretty good. I don't particularly like Taylor Kitsch as John Carter. I don't think he's got that much charisma. But I thought Lynn Collins was an inspired choice as Deja Thoris. So, for example, Abraxas MF makes an excellent point here. A fair bit of the difficulty in Labatt comes from user interface issues, or what Redmond Simonson might have called physical systems design, like the values on the front, on the backs of the counters, and the combat's pretty mathy and all that too. So there is what I tend to call tactility issues with it. And that is specifically what I mean when I say, there's important information that you will need to look at on the backs of the counters. Now, on the plus side, that you'll note that the fronts of the counters are extremely colorful in Labatai. And they look good, but the colors represent the actual like uniform colors of that particular battalion or regiment. Okay. So what that ends up meaning in practice is that every army's got a bunch of different colors in it. And it can be hard, if you're just going by color, to tell which unit belongs to which higher level formation. And that makes that's somewhat troublesome. There are some visual clues on the counters to some extent, but they do not provide you with an easy reference to that. Um, Mark, thanks for stopping by. Much appreciated. We are here where our game is dedicated to you this year, all of them. So our thoughts are with you, and we'll see you later. Richard Coker, thanks for stopping by. Super solid 64. Love John Carter. Awesome. Labatai de Mars. That would be awesome, actually. Pineapple on pizza. Ugh. I'll tell you what, I'm relatively unusual in that I like anchovies. I do not like anchovies on pizza. They're too powerful. They will maybe if you get like really high quality anchovies or something, but that ain't the kind of anchovies that the pizza place gets. Okay. So, this is very probable. This is very probable, Paulson. Just like grandma used to make. I mean, my grandmother used to make really good things like lasagna, and I have very seldom had a cheesecake as good as what my grandmother could make. And I don't know that that's a particularly stereotypically Italian food. Tuna and banana pizza. Okay. Yes, this is John Longshore. This is my thought exactly. That sounds horrific. That sounds yeah, no thanks. Joe Perez created a few of the playtest maps for John Carter. At one point, Mark said, just draw two ships side by side. Yeah, one of the maps is like that. It's like an airship battle, like boarding conflict. It's actually, I mean, now I think that's actually neat. But what I was looking for at the time when I picked it up, which would have been about the late 80s or early 90s, was the John Carter role playing game, which we simply did not have. We do now, actually. There's a John Carter role playing game, which is very well produced from Modifius that uses their 2D20 system. Meandering Mike, I think this is a completely legitimate point of view to have. The trouble with it is then you would have to paint those miniatures, and we don't have to paint these counters. So that saves us the trouble of doing the research and lets us farm that out to the fine folks at Marshall Enterprises and or Clash of Arms. Ian Crichton says the best advice about rules in Labatai is play with the rules in the box. That certainly simplifies the question for you, right? You don't have to wonder which rule set to play with. You can just play with the rules that came in the box. The trouble is, I've got about 7 different Labatai games now, and I believe there's about 4 or 5 different sets of rules in those boxes. So at that point, you're limiting its use as a series, right? It's continuity as a series if you're not following the same rules from game to game. And as we've seen, those rules can differ pretty significantly in top to bottom, right? in approach. The premier rules are really very different from the regs and Marie Louise. Let's see here. This is also true. Anchovy stuffed in Spanish or Greek olives. I love anchovies. I'll have a Caesar salad with whole anchovies. I guess that the trick to this is probably to get one anchovy and like mash it up and like smear it all over like 10 pieces of pizza. That might actually work. Yes, you noticed this too, and it wasn't that long after Rome. And James Purifoy was a fabulous piece of casting as Cantos Can, actually. And Julius Caesar was pretty good as was he Morris Kajak or Tardos Moors? I forget, but he was the father, so I assume that's what that worked out. White clam pizza. I've actually had this. It is really good when done well. I will agree. Ooh, so yeah, so this is a thing in Sandusky too. Sandusky style pizza is pizza with sauerkraut on it. Now, I am in Prince. There's grunting from other areas of the room, grunting of horror. I am in principle willing to try this. I am not, however, willing to pay $15 to buy a Sandusky style pizza with sauerkraut on it to try it. So, oh my God, no, under no circumstances, John, will I eat this. I will leave the room immediately if that gets busted out. And a good point, La Bataille de Beauchamp does not come in a box. It does come in an envelope with a CD-ROM in it, however. And like I said before, I'm pretty impressed with. This is basically. Yeah, no, I'm not even talking about it. dill pickle pizza with pesto instead of tomato sauce. I'm not opposed to the idea of using pesto instead of tomato sauce. Actually, that is um, not that bad of an idea. But pickles, I don't know. I don't know. I don't just like dill pickles, but I don't particularly like pickles on sandwiches either. The cat, my cats probably wouldn't touch that. My cats would be like, "Where's the Friskies?" This is true. I think there's a little more nuance to this statement. So Stigler here says that designer has to have a point of view on the rules. There's only one way to play a game per system. And I agree with that statement, right? A good designer is going to have something to say in their design. However, a series designer may not necessarily be designed by the person who designed the system, right? We've seen a lot of that with the gamers, for example, but also with Lava Time. So what the series designer had to say may not be the same thing, and really shouldn't be, as the thing that the game designer has to say. And those two can potentially come into conflict, as I think they do in certain games, like the Day of Days, for example. I would consider one example of where I don't think the series rules and the game itself, the rest of it, are really talking to each other using the same language. And I think it suffers as a result. Lots of folks disagree with me about that game. I still don't like it. Real sauerkraut, I mean, good sauerkraut, there is a big difference between good sauerkraut and like canned sauerkraut. I've never had good sauerkraut out of a can. Yes, you also do need to squeeze it and maybe put some sugar in it too, depending on a little bit of sugar. Oh God. There is absolutely space available, Dale Brady. Is the hotel block sold out? Okay, so the hotel is not sold out, but the BGF block is sold out. So you may end up paying a little extra. And it's not a particularly, as we've discovered, it's not a particularly cheap hotel, but it is a very nice hotel. And it does have all the amenities that you'd want, including a glorious subway and Charlie's Steakery. So, and a bunch of other food court options as well. Plus a little Quickie Mart, which might be closed already. I'm not sure. Quickie Mart's closed already? Mm. This is not a big show. So okay, yeah, so that's another thing is there's always something else happening here at the Hyatt. And we are not the biggest thing. So the Quickie Mart apparently is still open, which is nice because if you need like a Coke or a bag of chips or whatever, they've got that. Presumably they have like toothbrushes and highlighters and all the things that I forgot. But I did not forget anything major. Yeah, Dominic West is Sabthon, the bad guy. No, sort of the bad guy. The bad guy in the book, in the movie they made the Therns the bad guys right off the bat, and you don't really find that out until the second book if you read the books. Crab pizza. I've had seafood pizza on a number of occasions. That was very good. Matt Davidson says that sauerkraut pizza is surprisingly good. Like I said, I'm willing to try it. It might be terrible, but I'm willing to try it. You got to pay for it. So Michael Simon says that hates to say this, but Day of Days is broken. I don't know if it's broken, but I certainly found it not enjoyable. Paul Sin says he drive down but overbooked work. I certainly sympathize with that. Ardwulf Con, we'll see what happens. 2024 shooting for early September, late August, something like that. You can make sauerkraut at home, by the way. Yeah, but North Market ain't open right now. I think they not close the doors at 6. Some of the stalls closed earlier than that. But pretty much everything we had our agents went over to North Market earlier and reported that basically everything there is open. So here in the Hyatt food court, there is a place called Siam Express, which is like all the Asian food from all of Asia cooked by any Asian ever. And it's okay. There is a Thai place at North Market across High Street, and that is very good. That is actually Nita's Sushi, but it's more or less Thai food. There's also a Vietnamese place over there, and a Japanese ramen place, and a Mongolian dumplings place, and an Eastern European place. You can get pierogies and sausages and stuff like that. So I don't know about this, but I actually like juniper berries and sauerkraut too. This is not nearly as generic as Panda Express. I'm not saying it's better necessarily, but there is at least a wider variety of different pseudo Asian foods available, and they locked. They were open. Everybody was open as far as I could tell, but basically everybody closed at 5 or 6 except the pizza place, which services the whole downtown area here. So that's why they stay open because people come in and get it. The delivery comes in and gets it. Columbus's food specialty. Uh, Cream puffs from Schmitz, maybe. Schmitz. So Schmitz is a German restaurant that's been down in German Village for a long, long time, and I've eaten there a number of times, and it's decent. There's nothing wrong with it. But I don't think it's as good a German food as its reputation suggests. However, the cream puffs from Schmitz are amazing, and I have never had cream puffs that good from anybody else. I will tell you that. Otherwise, we get some of the Cleveland foods and some of the Cincinnati foods, and I'd like to actually see some more of the Cincinnati foods, to be honest. Since I'm not talking about Cincinnati chili, that's gross. I'm talking about Geta. Geta is delicious, and I wish you could get it in Cleveland. You can't, and it's hard to find even here in Columbus. You can order it on the internet, but it's a pain. Folks, we are going to have an abbreviated show tonight, but we are, based on our experience tonight, it looks like everything has worked out reasonably well. So we will not reschedule, but we will stick to the schedule for tomorrow night, where Dan and I at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time will welcome a very special guest. I didn't have the ticker. I did just StreamYard tonight. I didn't try and do anything fancy with OBS or any of that. That's why there's no ticker or anything like that. So, but everything worked out, so we'll stick with our plan. And worst case scenario, I got Dan that can run the show with the guest while I run outside with the phone and do it off the phone. So even if I have to set the thing up, that is still okay. So we will be on for tomorrow night. And Jeff Beeler, thanks so much. Red Roof Inn is right across the street, actually. It's very close. I would think it's much cheaper. That's true. Yeah, so there are a lot of good German restaurants down here, actually. So I did not know about, let me mention this. I did not know that there was a magazine-sized La Bataille game until I saw La Bataille de Vauchamp on a table at Compass Expo 3 or 4 years ago. And I'm like, oh, what's this? I took some pictures of it, and then I looked into it. I'm like, oh, this is a thing that appeared against the odds. How much does it go for on the secondary market? $90. No, thank you. I don't think so. And then against the odds had, a number of copies materialized. And I was lucky enough to get in on that. And I'm happy to print a rule book out myself, right? I will at some point do a video on the binding thing because I printed out the Marie Louise book. And I'm pretty happy. And I comb bound it myself, and I'm pretty happy with the way that turned out. I will. This could be, given the illustrious nature of our special guest for tomorrow, this could actually happen. I'm well aware that Dan cannot be left alone with no adult supervision for only limited periods. So it is known. So I do want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Sorry that the show was a little bit short, but we're kind of lucky it happened at all, given the circumstances happening here. And we are going to call it a night, and I'm going to probably try and crash pretty soon once I tear all this equipment down. But we will be back tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Dan. So once again, thanks everybody for watching. Don't forget to thumbs up the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to help support the channel, go ahead and look at the Patreon page, and there's a link to that in the video description and all that stuff. So once again, thanks everybody. Have a great night.